Like I said, it takes a team for the technology to work. So I introduced myself. Justine, since you were my helper just a second ago, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I am Justine Jordan. I am the technical assistant program manager for the Central Region. Super happy to have you here. Feel free to say hi in the chat. I'm in there watching it go. And I will pass it back to JoDee.
And we don't have Amanda's picture on here, but Amanda is helping us out all the time as well. Amanda, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Amanda Kern. I'm the administrative coordinator and I work with TA.
Thank you. Yes, you do. You support us all the time. And I don't know if Javaris joined us yet or not because I can't see the um,
Yes, I'm here.
perfect. Javaris, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, good people. Javaris Yarn is lead program manager for the center.
Thank you so much. Okay. So all of my pop-ups are coming up on the screen. That's all right. So I just happen to have come right back from a little vacation, short weekend visiting family. So I need to remind myself, but I also want to remind you all that, this is precious time. We do not get a ton of time with our colleagues, from across the state. Every time we get a survey back from you all, it talks about how much you appreciate being able to interact and learn from your colleagues from across the state. So this is the time. So as much as you possibly can, turn those walkies down a little bit so that you're not being distracted by them. Engage with your peers. We have a lot of content that we're going to be covering today that I think will be thought-provoking and open up some conversations. So be present, be active, and open your thoughts up to a lot of reflection. And here is the agenda so far. We have done the introductions and we talked about the meeting procedures. I have a ton of center updates that I'm going to inform you about. And then we'll get into the content. It's very content heavy. We may not have as much time for the Director Power Hour as we sometimes allocate, but you are welcome to stay on the call as long as you guys need for the Power Hour. But I may not be closing right out at 9:45 because I want everybody to have time to hear from the field. But we are today going to be talking about chronic absenteeism. Super important topic. So I want to make sure that we have ample time for everybody to share out all of their ideas and the things that are working. So that's what it's going to look like today. Our TA calendar, you can scan the QR code that's on the screen or Justine, look at you, you're Johnny on the spot. Justine has already put it in the chat. I highly recommend that you click on this link and you bookmark it so that you always are aware of the upcoming calendar invites and the things that are going on with us. So bookmark it so that you don't lose it. But just as a reminder, we are approaching our director learning exchanges coming up in 3-4 weeks, depending on what region you're in. We are ironing out the location for each of those regional DLEs. If you have questions, definitely reach out to your assigned program manager. Justine already announced she's in the central. I am covering the direct TA cohorts, which is across the entire state. Javaris is covering the north, and Tawana is covering the south. If you don't have our contact information, it will be on the last slide. But if you have questions about the regional structure of our director learning exchanges, feel free to reach out and we can get you the information you need. Quarter one reports were actually due yesterday, and I saw a ton of them coming in through my email because I get notifications for the schools, assigned to me for the direct cohort. If you haven't turned those in, please turn those in soon. If you're having challenges with turning them in, again, reach out to your program manager, your TA, and to Biz House, Shannon or Dara, if you're having some kind of challenges, and we'll help you through that. Always a reminder of the CPS Day at the Capitol. January seems like a long time away, but once the holidays start hitting, It's not going to be that far away. So we want you to start thinking now about how you want to be involved in that, whether that means a trip to the Capitol or whether it means behind the scenes doing some other things or some other communications. But we all want to advocate regarding the great work that we're doing in our community partnership schools. We had what we're calling onboarding, ongoing onboarding, but basically we are having periodic onboarding that is open to anybody that wants to attend who may have missed direct one-on-one or onboarding when they came on board, or we know that sometimes when you're working to do the onboarding at the very beginning of your employment, it's a lot of information. There's a huge learning curve. I know that this happened to me when I came on board. That there were things that were presented to me that just I didn't have the depth of comprehension yet. And then when the exact same information was presented to me again, I understood it and, took the information in a different way. So you can always sit in on the onboarding to just kind of layer your depth of knowledge. And you can also share that. Those are open to any of your partners. It can be the principals, it can be any of your partners that want to kind of walk through that onboarding. And speaking of which, onboarding is something that I don't know if it's directly or indirectly covered in certification, but that showing that you are sharing onboarding opportunities is something that you can use for certification purposes when you're showing evidences. I believe onboarding of your partners is 2.11. In case you were wondering. So that's one way to show that you are attempting and making efforts to onboard your partners. You filled out something in your quarter one report with the org chart survey. We're working through some kinks. It may not have included the stakeholders. It is really important that we get that information. So you may be hearing from us in the next few weeks to kind of have a piece of that survey filled out. Again, it's not the entire thing, so don't worry about that. We know that with the quarterly reports, it's really long, but it's really important for us to be able to help your stakeholders to understand about community partnership schools, to have a forum where they can not only understand and be onboarded, but also, create, have idea exchange and thought partners with their own stakeholders. So it's really important that we have their contact information so that we can invite them to those opportunities. The more that they are invested in that, the easier your job gets, because you're not the one that has to, share all the information and get them more deeply invested. We can partner with you and help you to do that. So definitely, if you haven't heard from us yet, don't worry about it, but we may be reaching out to everyone to get more information about your network stakeholder partners. So many of you have already gone in and signed up for our new training academy. We had a migration of our users that happened on October 1st. You should have received an email. I hear that some of them went to spam, so check your spam. But if you have not received an email yet, I believe that there are new emails going out today, if I remember correctly. And it is an email that says that it's coming from UCF Continuing Education, which I know was a little confusing, but that's where the platform email comes from. And it has all the instructions about what you need to do to log into the new training academy. We're very excited about the new training academy. And it looks a little bit different, but the learning modules that are on there right now for community schools is Community School Foundations, CPS Reporting 101, and soon CPS 101 will be coming to Training Academy as well. All of the resources that we talk about being available to you are in the resource library section. And all of our circle backs are listed there. So if you don't receive the email or you've lost the email and you're like, I know that they covered this content in a director network call or some other network call, you can find all of the old ones within the somewhat recent past on the Training Academy. There's information about Learning Circle and how you can use that as a data evaluation method as opposed to just quarterly reporting, but it also has a quarterly reporting information in there and information on your grant management, all kinds of information in Training Academy. It's a great resource. So if you haven't received the email, I think one's coming out today, so look for it. But you can always reach out to your program manager again, put in a technical assistance request. Anybody want to raise their hand and tell me where to find their technical assistance request form? A little pop quiz for you. Anybody know where to find the TA request form? I know some of you have been using it.
It's in your email.
That's what, thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate everybody's being shy this morning, but group participation. There's my email has it on it. You're right. I'm not sure if every program manager does. It's also in the content that we sent out, the TA handbook. It's in there as well, but there also happens to be a link on Training Academy. There's a link for the TA request form. So you can fill one of those out if you're having trouble with the Training Academy, and we'll get you to the right person to help with that. All right, I already talked about the Director Power Hour. If you're new on this call, I don't think we have anybody brand new, but if you are brand new on this call, at the end of our meeting, when the UCF Center has finished with their presentation and all of the information that we're sharing, we devote some time and leave a space for the directors to just have conversations amongst themselves. It's a protected space where the UCF team leaves the room so that you can speak freely and talk about whatever it is that you need to talk about. I will be asking for a host to stay on the line because if all of us log off, then the meeting will end. So we have to have a host for that time. So I'll be asking for that later on in the presentation. Feel free to stay if you want. If you don't, need to stay or you have other meetings to get to, that's perfectly fine as well. I have made mention of circle back. When I use that terminology, I'm talking about kind of the summary that we send out of all of our meetings, in case you need to refer back to it or in case you have to miss one of our calls or events for whatever reason. We always summarize and give you the resources from that meeting or event in what we call a circle back, and it comes through MailChimp. If you're not receiving those, then it's probably because there's some kind of block that's happening with your school district or your organization. So if you're not receiving it, again, reach out to us and we can kind of help you figure that out. But they are on the Training Academy, so you can look for them yourself if you're having trouble finding them. All right, so we work with different UCF interns at times through our center, and we have a social work intern that is working on the topic of student voice in community partnership schools. So she will be sending out on behalf of the intern a survey to all of our CPS directors. The goal is the email to be sent by October 20th. It won't be a long survey, but we are going to use that information to kind of find out how does everybody do student voice? How do they include it? How do they amplify student voice? And we hope to use the responses to kind of develop some best practices so that we can share across our entire network, across the state, for how we can amplify and include student voice. So be looking for that survey to come to your email inboxes probably in the next couple of weeks as well. Okay, so let me take a deep breath and slow down. Raise your hand or do a thumbs up if you have ever listened to a Rita Pierson TED Talk. Yes, I see some thumbs up there. Sometimes I need to just be inspired and remember, through all the busy work, remember why we're in it, especially when you have a rough day. You guys are working with the students every day, so you get reminders every day, but sometimes we need a reminder of why are we doing this work? What is our passion? And what kind of a difference we make? That's the other thing, is that sometimes we do not have we do not have the ability to see that we're making a difference in the lives of our students because it's such challenging work. So if I have set up this video correctly, it will play. If not, we'll work through the complications. So let's see. Justine or Amanda, somebody let me know if the sound doesn't work, because I think I may have needed to check something for the sound, but let's try it. All right, I paused it. Are you hearing it? Or
No,
were you hearing it? I'm sorry?
no, we can't hear it.
No. All right, let me go back to the sharing again and see if I can figure that out. Isn't there
If
share
you
sound? There
unshare,
it is.
I was about to
Yes.
say, yeah, there's usually a little box.
Yeah, okay. Back to that and then back to the right screen. Ooh. There you are. Okay, let's try this again.
We know why kids don't learn. It's either poverty, low attendance, negative peer influences. We know why. But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connection. Relationships. I have had classes that were so low, so academically deficient that I cried. I wondered, how am I going to take this group in 9 months from where they are to where they need to be? How do I raise the self-esteem of a child and his academic achievement at the same time? One year I came up with a bright idea. I told all my students, you were chosen to be in my class because I am the best teacher and you are the best students. They put us all together so we could show everybody else how to do it. One of the students said, really? I said, really? And I gave him a saying to say, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. And they said, yeah. You say it long enough, it starts to be a part of you. Both my parents were educators. My maternal grandparents were educators. For years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in her desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. Years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't. And I want you to just see what I've become. And when my mama died 2 years ago at 92, there were so many former students at her funeral. It brought tears to my eyes, not because she was gone, but because she left a legacy of relationships that could never disappear. Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Is this job tough? You betcha. Oh God, you betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We're educators. We're born to make a difference. Thank you so much.
So I, by no means, am the motivational speaker that Rita Pierson is. So, you know, let other people speak when it's their like platform but boy, sometimes I need to hear that. And it resonated with me because you know, we don't always think of ourselves as educators because we're not the teachers in the classroom. But by all means, the things that she talked about are the things that you're doing. You are making sure that the students are fed. You are making sure that they have the hygiene. You are being the person that is a connection that believes in them. And that is so important. You know, I've said before, my background is as a licensed mental health counselor. And I've often said, it's really nice that I went to school and I learned all these great techniques, and that's very helpful. But when it comes down to it, what really helps children to heal is having that connection and that trust with a person. And I know that you guys are that for so, so many students. So pat on the back, appreciate yourself, know that you're making a difference. And we're going to move right along and talk about chronic absenteeism. Like I just said about my career, I was trained as a licensed mental health counselor in different techniques. The connection matters, and we're all doing that, but it also matters that we're using research-informed strategies to really tackle the complex problems. Chronic absenteeism is a very complex problem that we need to tackle from many different parts of the work that we're doing. So we know that you don't have time to sit and read research studies all day long because you're hustling and bustling and moving around and making things happen at your school. So we want to be able to provide to you some insights about what the research says is working so that you can use that research in order to use your time wisely and have the most impact that you can have in the interventions that you're using. So just to kind of set the stage a little bit, you can see crawling across the screen, the timing of that did not work. I'll have to fix that next time. But a lot of people talk about how chronic absenteeism had its roots in the COVID pandemic and the changes that happened with moving to kind of a virtual platform, and kids weren't attending class and they just kind of got out of the habit of it. I'm not here to debate the reasons why, but you can see that even after COVID went away and we went back to the way school had been done before, the absenteeism in Florida did not go down, it actually went up. So you can see that it was 20% or so of chronic absenteeism before the pandemic. And then in 22, when the pandemic was over, so to speak, school was turning to normal. It went up to 32%, and then it really hasn't dropped that much since. So across the state of Florida, according to, the research is always a little bit behind, but this is in 23, 24. And all of the different resources that I'm using for this are in a slide later in the presentation if you wanted to look at some of this yourself. But across the state of Florida, we still are having over 30% chronic absenteeism. Different research, I don't want to get too deep into the research, but different research uses different markers. In Florida, it's missing 21 or more days, you can, if you're absent 10% or more of the academic year. So some of this uses different markers, but overall, I think you can see that we have an issue with absenteeism across the state of Florida. Let's talk about, so that was kind of the United States look, and you could see that we were way high, higher than many other states. If you look at just Florida, and you can probably pinpoint on the map which county you are. And again, this is a little bit older because the research takes a little bit to catch up. We don't have the current numbers. So the map is 22, 23. But you can see that we have in Florida anywhere from 14% as the lowest county percentage of chronic absenteeism to 55% as the highest. 55% of students fall into the chronic absenteeism category in some of our school districts in Florida. And you can see the counties there, and I don't put the counties there to call anybody out. There's the 5 lowest percent and the 5 highest percent. But regardless of where you are on the map, my guess is that a great majority of you are working with your principal on chronic absenteeism. So go ahead and raise your hand or put a thumbs up if you have as one of your CPS strategic plan goals is working on chronic absenteeism in some way. Because my guess is most school improvement plans, which is part of what informs our strategic plan goals, most school improvement plans have chronic absenteeism. So even if you're one of those 5 lowest, it doesn't hurt to have interventions on chronic absenteeism because there are still students in every single one of our school districts. So yes, it is definitely a problem. Now, if we want to go down to the schools, so we've looked at the whole nation, we've looked at the state of Florida. If you want to look at your school, one of the resources that may be available to you is Learning Circle. Now, I know that over the last year or so, we've started talking about Learning Circle as more than just a quarterly reporting tool. We've had some different presentations that Dr. Thompson has done on how to use Learning Circle in a different way to evaluate your data and really see, how your interventions are impacting students. There are a couple of links that are on this slide to kind of show you how to do that. Now I know that not everybody has a DSA agreement. I understand that. I do believe that the majority, I think we have over 50% of our schools have a DSA agreement. Without a DSA agreement, the full capabilities of Learning Circle are not available to you. But what they're pulling in, so I don't want to get too far into Learning Circle. If you want to get more information about that, you can click on the links, but you can always reach out to us or Dr. Christine Thompson at the center to kind of figure out more, how do I use Learning Circle in terms of data and evaluation of my programs and services. But even without a DSA agreement, there are ways to get this information, because this information is being pulled directly from school district reports that the staff at your school have access to. So we could help you to figure out, how do I pull this information even if I don't have a data sharing agreement. But you can look, so if you are to look at the block there that says attendance, you can actually, if your Learning Circle is working appropriately and you have a DSA agreement, you can click on the number of students that fall into like that red category on this screen. There are 82 students that fall into that chronic absenteeism. According to the definition that's put into this. So you could click on that 82, you could get the names of all of those 82 students, and you can see, am I providing interventions to any of those students? Do we need to see if we can get some of those students into some of the interventions that I know have an impact on chronic absenteeism? You can also, so you can kind of target specific students knowing that they maybe could benefit from your interventions. Or you can kind of reverse engineer it, and you can look at the programs that you're providing and see how they're impacting those specific students if you're tracking like who's attending what different programs and services. So you can really use this to get to the bottom of your specific students at your school. Okay, so I am going to slow my pace. Like I said, all of this presentation is about the research that we have put together for you, kind of condensed it for you to know about. So I am going to launch a quiz. It's only 4 questions, and it's kind of like, where is your, like, how much knowledge do you already have? We're going to do the same post-test later, so you're going to get to see how much knowledge you've gained, which is wonderful. So take a moment. You should see it on your screen. Justine, is it showing up?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. So I'll take a moment and let you do that. I see some responses are coming in. All right, I'm going to give you 1 minute more. All right, I don't see a lot more coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And I will share the results real quick so that you can kind of get a sense. But you know what? I don't know if I should show you the correct answer since we're taking it again later. So, all right. All right, so let's get into what the research says. So what you're seeing on your screen, it's a table that depicts the risk factors and the kind of predictors of chronic absenteeism, according to the research. And you'll see that a lot of these, so it talks about the individual factors, family factors, school factors, and community factors. And you will see that CPS kind of overlays, like if you, right on top of all of those different kind of groupings, because we work with the school, the community, the individual student, and with the family. So if chronic absenteeism is something that CPS is really well positioned to, help to tackle. So I put the red arrows and the green arrows on there. And so a lot of these, the risk factors oftentimes are things that we can't fix, right? We can't fix the fact that there's a student coming from a single parent household. We can't fix that there may be some mental health problems with the student, mental health challenges, right? But we can definitely address more of the protective factors. You probably heard that terminologies, risk factors and protective factors. We always want to boost up the protective factors as much as we can to offset the risk factors that are already present. So you'll see in red, there may be some things that we can't address, but in green, there are definitely things that we can bump up instead of in terms of protective factors. For instance, I put a green arrow next to higher parental education. I did that because I know that we sometimes work with parents on the language barriers, and I know that we have some sites that are teaching English as a second language to some parents, which helps with their ability to be involved in education, potentially going back to school, potentially getting their GED. We definitely can do things to help students feel safer at school. And you know what? There's a red arrow under more supervised time, unsupervised time, and that's definitely something that should have been a green arrow because a lot of our expanded learning programs give more supervised time to students than they would have if they weren't involved in any of the after school programs. So some of them we definitely cannot address, right? The risk factors are there, but we can definitely make a difference in boosting up the protective factors that can kind of combat or offset some of the risk factors for chronic absenteeism. So let's talk through our CPS pillars. How can we approach and address the risk factors through our different pillars? So the health pillar, let's talk about that one first. So a lot of the research focuses on behavioral health interventions that combat absenteeism. You may or may not have a mental health counselor through your CPS itself, but even if you don't have your own mental health counselor, you can work with the school related staff or the staff at the school that has something to do with behavior and mental health interventions. The school counselors, guidance counselors, the behavior interventionists, those team members, you can share this information with them and talk to them about what the research says that we can do to target absenteeism. So you can see on the screen there that some of them are listed. You guys may already be doing some of these things. I know that I visited many schools that have a calm corner or a calm room, or you may call it something different. Those are relaxation and like kind of ways to manage that stress response for staff and students. But so I know some of you are engaged in all of this already yourselves, even if it's not through a mental health counselor. But if you do have a mental health counselor, these are specific, like therapeutic approaches that, again, you can have a conversation with your mental health counselor. They should be well versed in these different techniques. So cognitive behavior therapy, parent-focused CBT, there's a lot of work that we can do to help parents understand kind of how to address the behaviors at home. Because, you know, we all know that they get into this cycle of a child doesn't want to attend school. And they, you know, get really upset at home. They throw a fit. They don't get themselves ready. The parents have to deal with a lot, right, in order to just get them out the door and get them to school. And it's exhausting. And we need to help give the tools to the parents so that they understand how to kind of break that cycle of if a student kind of, you know, makes it hard to get themselves out the door, that the parent has some tools and resources. Well, how can I deal with that other than it turning into this chaotic, angry, negative interaction? So social skills training is another one. It doesn't require as much parent involvement. If you're having trouble getting engaged with that student's parent, there are social skills training programs. So, and it says pharmacotherapy. Obviously, we're not giving out any kind of mental health medications, but we can help parents to connect to the right people through our medical services. That might be an option. So I put it on there because that is also something through the mental health lens that could be a resource or a tool. So I have talked a lot about health pillar interventions, mostly through the mental health or behavioral health lens, but there are a lot more. So I wanted to open it up to you all because you have the expertise on the ground of what are you doing through the health pillar that's addressing some of the things that you see on this chart. So just feel free to unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat.
I mean, I'll jump in. It providing the wellness services here on campus, in a remote or more rural or away situation like I'm in. Students miss at minimum half a day to go to a doctor's appointment, and generally they miss the whole day. And in our community where transportation is such an issue, if they miss the bus coming in or or miss it the other way out, the parents can't come get them and get them to the appointments that they need. So those preventative and the checkups that are needed, dental, vision, flu shots, and then primary care as well, and being able to provide the transportation piece is vital to our reducing absenteeism initiatives.
You are absolutely correct, Isaac, and I'm glad that you brought that up and that you're like putting those two things together. So I'm going to ask like a reflection question. When you're not just for you, Isaac, I wouldn't put you on the spot like that, but for all of you, many of you are providing similar types of health services, right? And absolutely, it helps to have the student in the classroom more like overall time than if they had to leave school, if they had transportation issues because they had to take a student to the doctor, and then it's not worth it to get back to the school because it's too hard, so they just miss the entire day instead of an hour or two. Like all of those things, many of our sites are doing. My reflection question for you all is that as you are doing those things, are you tying that back into absenteeism when you're having strategic planning discussions, when you're talking with principals about ways that you are targeting absenteeism? So just like reflect for yourself. Am I including those types of interventions in the conversations that I'm having about what I, as a CPS director, am doing to address chronic absenteeism? Okay, so great reflection question. Let's see. So I just listed some others here that the research has listed. Collaborating with your behavior interventionists at school. So this is school staff for behavior plans that specifically address absenteeism based on some of the research that you're hearing about. We already talked about coordinating the mental health or the medical services. And then parent mental health and behavioral health intervention workshops. I already mentioned this in terms of, we need to sometimes help the parents to have resources for how do I deal with a child that just doesn't want to go to school, or they make it so hard to go to school, if that is the underlying issue. I did see someone in the chat put something about, well, the students aren't there to even benefit from the different resources that we're providing at school, whether that be counseling or some of the other interventions. And that is true too. The interventions don't work if the students aren't there to have them. We're going to talk about some of the family and community engagement interventions that research has shown can help to, if you're not targeting the student themselves, how can we get to the parent or the community if the student isn't there to benefit from the resources to start with? So we are going to talk about that. All right, so another pillar that we can target absenteeism is expanded learning. So I was just talking a little bit about that. When it comes
JoDee,
down to, yeah.
sorry to interrupt. Oscar had a question.
Oh, go ahead,
It's
Oscar.
more,
I didn't see your hand.
it's more of a comment. Coming from a CPS school, a middle school that certified CPS school to one that's not. One of the things that I'm learning is sometimes we don't talk about this, but the school and partner culture, right? There's a lot of walls that have been built up for many, many years of why we can't do things instead of having services and things that we can do of, let's get through it. Let's do it no matter what. Let's break down those walls. Let me give an example. Immunization and vaccines. We have a wellness partner here that says, oh, we can't do all these because some of these need to be refrigerated, some of these, and we're like, that's crazy. We need to bring all immunizations and we need to get our kids get them vaccinated and immunized. And so we call a different partner, University of Miami, and then they come in and they bring everything. So why can't one partner do it and then one not? So a lot of times we're dealing with legacy organizations that have been here for 30, 40 years that put all these barriers to bring in services and systems in place to help our students. So I just wanted to make sure that we don't talk about school culture and organizational culture, but that's a barrier that we all probably run into that doesn't help us do our jobs.
Thank you for bringing that up, and you're absolutely right. The barriers that the systems put in place sometimes is what keeps us from being able to do some of the work that we know could have a huge impact. So yes, thank you for bringing that up. You guys, I've been working in community schools for a year now, a little over a year. And every time I interact with a director, one of y'all, I'm like, you're problem-solving skills when you bump up against challenges. Like if I was envisioning a video game, you guys would be like, okay, I'm old, but the Donkey Kong that's like breaking down the wall of barrels because you are such good problem solvers, engaging partners. And sometimes it does mean that you have to like expand the partnerships that you have. Always you want good relationships with the existing partners, but if there are barriers that the systems can't address, there you can have evolving and expanded partnerships with other partners that don't have as many barriers or that are more willing to break them down. I do see some of the stuff in the chat. Miss Bango Cooper put in the chat about the partners coming into play because they already do oftentimes have connections, relationships with the families. So if the student isn't, showing up at the school and you can't do anything with the student directly, having a conversation with your partners who may already have a relationship with the family, in some of these neighborhood schools, they know grandma, they may know great grandma. So there are ways to have conversations with the parents and the family, even if the student isn't readily available. And the partners are a wonderful, wonderful resource for that. So thank you for bringing that up, Ms. Mango Cooper. Okay, so expanded learning. So expanded learning, I already talked earlier about like unsupervised time. That is a risk factor for absenteeism, right? So if students are left unsupervised the majority of their time, oftentimes they're not going to be choosing to go to school, right? So having really engaging expanded learning, things that the students like, things that the students want to go to school for. I grew up in a really small town and we didn't have all the resources available that you guys, have made available to your school and your student body. But the thing that got me to school on the days that I'm like, I just really don't feel like it. I didn't have, my parents already had left for work a lot of times by the time that, I was getting ready for school. It was older brothers and sisters that were getting me to school. But as I got older, it was sports that got me to go to school no matter what, because if you didn't go to school that day, you weren't allowed to go to practice. And I became a very good student over time because I was at school and could benefit from all of these things. So having really engaging, expanded learning opportunities is also really important. So how do you know which expanded learning opportunities are going to be engaging for your student body? Anybody want to answer that? How do you know? Yes, talk with students, definitely. So this kind of goes back to your needs assessment, whether it's the needs assessment that's like been updated, within the last couple of years. I think that we talk about a needs assessment as if it's like this static thing that happens one time and then another time, like 3 to 5 years later, right? We are constantly gathering feedback from our students, from our parents, but especially when it comes to this, from our students. If you have, let me do an example. So if you have soccer club or whatever you want to call it, you have soccer as an expanded learning opportunity. How do you know that soccer is the thing that's engaging them and pulling them into school? How do you know that it's enticing them to be present at school? You do that by gathering data, gathering feedback. What's the attendance at soccer look like? Talk to the students, talk to the parents. So there are a lot of ways to gather feedback, and the needs assessment really is the needs assessment and asset mapping really is kind of a living thing. So, we do it and we do the actual report, but we're constantly gathering feedback about what programs are working for our students. So yes, I talked about how, it encourages them to go to school because they're engaged in it. It also, a lot of our expanded learning is what's going to help our students to begin to gain confidence that they are a good student. And there's a ton of research out there that talks about students that see themselves as learners, capable of learning, are much more engaged in the school process. And we can do a ton to address kind of the belief system in themselves being good learners, right? So give them that confidence with, I can learn, learning can be fun, because they always, a lot of times they have, in their head, this mantra that they say to themselves: school sucks. I hate school. I can't do math. I can't read. I'm always like doing bad on tests. Other students do better than me. So we can combat that through the messaging we give in the after school or expanded learning type programs. I thought I saw a hand. I don't know if somebody was raising their hand. I'll pause for a second in case somebody's trying to break in. And I'm seeing tons of good stuff in the chat about band. I've heard Joan's band. It's awesome. There are so many, and I want you to start to like connect the dots. What am I providing that is helping with absenteeism? And am I having conversations with my cabinet, with the principal about all of the things that I'm doing that is probably impacting absenteeism? And am I trying to pull the data Sometimes it's harder than others, but am I looking at who is attending my different programs and seeing if they are a student that is having issues with absenteeism? And can I tell if what I'm providing is helping them be at school more? So pulling all those pieces together is really important. Okay, so another pillar, family and community.
JoDee.
Yep. Yes,
really
yes,
quick.
yes.
I just wanted to add, like with the needs assessment, you know, how important that is, but also like ongoing surveys, because sometimes the needs assessment can be a little behind and you can sometimes miss opportunities to be able to provide students with programming. And because the school year is so flexible, sometimes you have to be able to take advantage or kind of hit while the fire is hot. And so, you know, Oscar is really good at this. If you are, you know, just engaging with students and there's an opportunity to connect and bring diverse programming to, you know, the school with great relationships with your principals, then you're able to do that. And sometimes it's one-off, you know, sometimes it's a one-off program where, hey, we can, you know, we did a braiding class that turned out to be like top tier. But it was something that the students kind of brought up, and we did a, you know, kind of short, you know, survey with it and was able to engage. So sometimes we definitely need to be engaged with our needs assessment, but just ongoing conversations with students and not negating those conversations. And the voice, earlier you started with the slide that said, you know, the voice of the students, you know, constantly being or having student input will allow you to be guided by, you know, how you engage and what services you provide. So constant engagement, constant surveying, constant, you know, input from student voices, I think will guide this.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I also want you to think about all of the ways that you're getting that feedback from your students, and are you able to show it? Because again, I've been out on the campuses and I've seen you guys working. You are constantly gathering feedback through your just conversations even, right? Sometimes it's more formalized where you're kind of doing a poll. Sometimes it's just conversations. All of that, again, and this isn't about certification, but I know that there's like kind of you have to flip the switch sometimes to be like, how am I gathering feedback, right? And so be thinking through all those times that you're getting feedback, even if you just jot down your notes, even if it's not a formal survey, but it's like, I had a conversation with 5 students today about this, and this is the feedback they gave me. That is still information that can be provided to certification as evidence. We are definitely going to go over time, and I'm going to respect it as best as I can, but I knew this content was going to be a lot. Great conversations, and we have some examples from the field coming up that I think are really going to be beneficial to hear about. So I want to get to that. So family and community engagement, I don't want to, cut this short, because a lot of the work with absenteeism is going to come through family and community engagement. So in schools, yes, if the students are there, you can do a lot of work with them, but a lot of work can be done through our work with family and the community. So you'll see that the text in black, you may recognize that from the little quiz we had earlier. So the ones in black are shown by research to be the most effective. The other ones that are listed are effective as well, right? But the most impact came from those in black. So incentives to students for improved attendance. I know many of you are involved in that. Newsletters that go home listing the students with excellent attendance. The student and the parents, get a sense of pride when they see their student's name in a publication that's going out to the community. So those are shown to be very effective. Home visits to discuss attendance policies and practices. So sometimes you need to connect with that parent to kind of really get down to the one-to-one level and get a sense of what's going on and do some problem solving. So home visits are very effective. And inviting parents to award ceremonies, the same thing, like giving the student and their parent a sense of pride that look at what my kiddo's doing, right? And to celebrate them together. Like I said, there's a lot of research that shows that these other things that are listed are also impactful, but the most impactful ones were the ones that are listed in black text. So I want to do our post test so that we can kind of get a sense of, let's see, a sense of where we're at. Okay, so how do I get to, hold on. Okay, so post test. Okay, 4 questions again. You should be familiar with them. So it shouldn't take you too long. And then we're going to talk about examples from some of our CPS sites that are working really well.
Are these the same questions from the last quiz?
They're exactly the same questions. It's a pre and post to see like what you knew before and what you know now. It's a gain. How much knowledge have you gained? So yeah, same questions, so you can breeze through them pretty quickly.
JoDee, one of the things that you mentioned was newsletter, sending newsletter at home.
Yes.
And I would expand that to communications sending at home, because the problem that we're having is that newsletters are stale. So once you send it out, it kind of, it's outdated. So we've been using a lot of Instagram for us, and that's been working out and highlighting our kids. So communications instead of newsletters, I think, is more broader.
Yeah, I think you're right. I pulled that directly from the research terminology, but I think you're right. Communication has changed and newsletters are a little bit old school for sure. Okay, I am going to end the poll. Hopefully everybody had time to complete it. And I am going to hand over the reins to Kathy. Hold on one second. Oh, no. Okay, so Kathy from Sulphur Springs, K through 8. I just keep hearing wonderful things about what they're doing at their school. So I would love for her to take some time and talk about what she's doing, and then we can open it up and talk about what some of the other sites are doing. And we will be done for sure by 10:15. If you have to jump, I'm sorry, but hopefully you can stay and hear from your colleagues. So Kathy, are you there?
I am. Good morning.
Good morning.
So thank you for this opportunity. Kind of took me by surprise when you reached out and said, "Hey, would you mind to share?" So just to give a little bit of context, I've been here at Sulphur Springs. I'm going into year 2 as a community school director. I had a very short stint as an expanded learning coordinator here. But I've been in education and I've been a part of the community school process for about since its conception, because I was a teacher at Crystal Lake when it started 10 years ago, and through that whole onboarding process. So I've been around community schools for, like I said, the last 10 years. So when I took over as community school director in beginning of last school year, we had a startling rate of 64% chronic absenteeism. And I don't know who's doing the slides, but if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, and so 467 students out of our 623 were deemed to be chronically absent. And so as my very first strategic planning, my very first big thing, I'd been on the job like 4 weeks when this happened, was, oh, we need to reduce chronic absenteeism. And here I am looking like, oh my goodness, how do we tackle this? And so we set what we thought was an attainable goal of reducing chronic absenteeism by 10%. And really, this began as a conversation with all of our stakeholders. We talked about it with our cabinet. We talked about it with our administration. And then when we brought students back, or when we brought teachers back, we had a conversation with them. So it was educating our entire school, stakeholders from parents to teachers, student services, admin, cabinet, all of those people that are coming to the table to really participate in collaborative leadership. We shared with them the data. Next slide, please. So out of our strategic planning, we came up with that we were going to launch a subcommittee that was going to really dive into this. And being that I was new to the school or newish to the school, I didn't know what the trends were. I didn't know all of the data. So we had to start somewhere. Through this, we began to look at how do how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so we had to start somewhere. So we started we started with a data dive, and through that, we were able to look at all of the all of the classes and where our trends were. And what we identified was that our intermediate elementary had the worst attendance of even from middle to our lower elementary. If someone go to the next slide. So we did those grade level assessments. We looked at our demographics. We looked at teacher placement. And then we evaluated those trends. And so as we went through this, we discovered that fourth grade just continued to drop. They did have a full-time sub in there. There was a lot of different things that were happening. And I used Learning Circle. I know that's kind of a bad everybody has a love-hate relationship with Learning Circle, but that was the only data that I had. Our data sharing agreement went live in January. It was the only data that I was able to really access, because in Hillsborough County, those of us that are in Hillsborough County, there was a whole breakdown with the platform that we were using, and getting data was very difficult. So it was constantly bringing that data back to our cabinet, back to those admin meetings, and really being intentional about meeting with the student services team. So I definitely, embodied a collaborative leadership, approach to tackle this. Next slide, please. So last year we had 703 students enrolled. And at first look through Learning Circle, it looked like we had reduced our chronic absenteeism by about 11%, and and this was in June, that we were sitting at 53. Total enrolled students, kindergarten through 8, was 627 students. So you can see the difference. There's roughly 60 students that were 64 students that were, or I'm not doing the math very well, but anyway, our Head Start students, we took them out, and so we went down to 51. And then, as I talked about, we were looking at our fourth grade trends. So, and this I think was very eye-opening as I shared this with our cabinet. So in fourth grade alone, we were 62% last year with chronic absenteeism. 11 out of 15 of our ELL students were chronically absent. Surprisingly, none of our ESE or 504 were deemed chronically absent. Hispanic students, 72% of that subgroup, 18 out of 25 students were chronically absent. African American, 21 out of 34. White was 4 out of 6, and then out of our multiracial group, it was 100%. So that was just very eye-opening as we looked at the demographics, and this kind of held true all the way through our elementary. Middle school, surprisingly enough, their chronic absenteeism was much lower, and they had less students that were chronically absent than our elementary. I am proud to say that we even reduced further than that. We dropped a total of 18% in our chronic absenteeism in 1 year. That is not my doing. Did I lead the conversations? Absolutely. Did I put the data out in front of them? Yes. Did I constantly meet with my core team for all of the pillars? Yes. Did we do some of those things? Did we do newsletters? Absolutely. Did we have expanded learning opportunities? Yes. Did we do all of those things? We did all of those things that are good practice, that are all that we all do every day, and that were being done at the school prior to me taking on this role. What I think really contributed was that constant was bringing the data back to the forefront and looking at it and being strategic and intentional about what the data was showing and what the data was speaking, and what message it was giving to us. And so our tier 1 and tier 2 interventions, from the district plan to our school-based strategic plan, through PBIS and all of those good things, those were done with fidelity. Now this next year, if JoDee, if you can go to the next slide, the way we're going, so as we are moving forward, this is how we're going to continue to hopefully move the needle forward. We have started attendance cohorts and partner collaboration. So those fourth graders last year, that baseline data from them last year, we have moved them into cohorts this year. We have a girls cohort and a boys cohort, and we have engaged partners. And so they are having never miss a Monday or Thursday, depending on when their days meet. And we have mentors coming in that are meeting with them every Monday. Did you make it? Are you here? What do you know, and really getting that student voice. And so our partners that are meeting with us is our USF partnership, who sits on our cabinet, obviously our CPS team, United Way, our student services, and our admin. So many of these are represented on our cabinet, but they're also taking an invested interest in what's happening in the school and are willing to put that. So engage your partners. Become really, really good at storytelling. Nobody wants to hear that their school is almost 65% chronically absent. And like, if you looked at Hillsborough County, we weren't in the top 5, nor were we in the bottom five. But in terms of our district, Sulphur Springs was definitely the outlier, with over 50% mobility of our student body every year, as well as the chronic absenteeism. So how do we keep moving this forward? We are really looking this year to kind of maintain that big decrease and start to move that number down towards sustainability. Like, now we have to test the data. Is what we implemented, was that strategic and intentional? Was it a fluke? Like, how did it, all of those things. So now we have to test the data and test the initiatives and those interventions that we put in place. JoDee, can you go to the next one?
Sorry, my cursor is not wanting to move, but I don't know that I have a.
Okay.
Okay.
So I wanted to be very respectful of everybody's time. We didn't do anything that was just like, crazy out of the norm. And I'm sure all of us are doing very much of the same types of interventions. But I would encourage you, if you're not having those frequent data chats with those key stakeholders, becoming an ally. I had to break down some walls with my social worker, and I had to come to her, and I had to build that relationship with my social worker. I had to build that relationship with our guidance counselor and those that were providing those services, and really begin to intentionally sit on those teams and build that relationship. And I really believe that collaborative approach and the intentional integration of those that are already doing the work on your campus, giving them their props, empowering them, coming alongside of them, helped us move the needle. And like I said, we reduced by 18%, which I know in the advisory council, somebody fact checked us because they were like, is that actually true? It actually is. And we actually, in one of the more recent numbers, as those numbers are still coming in from last year, it looks like we're trending closer to 20, but I'm good with 18, because the more that goes down, the harder that is to maintain for next year. But anyway, so any questions or comments? Like I said, I know I'm sitting in a room full of experts. Thank you so much for allowing me to share our school's success, but we are very proud of our students, and we want to keep moving them forward.
Well, definitely. I know that we've gone over time, and I'm sorry for that. That is my fault. But Kathy has done some wonderful things, but she's right. Many of the things that they're doing are things that others of you are doing. What I love about the approach, Kathy, that you and your partners took, I worked on a program that was focused on reducing or increasing graduation rates, reducing dropout rates. And when you talk, it's kind of the same thing. If you think about this as this huge project, it's a little overwhelming. But when you dig down into the data and you say, okay, I don't have to worry about every student. Some students are doing fine. Let me find let me use the data to refine where the interventions need to be focused. And you'll be amazed at the percentages that you can pull when you're working with the right people. If you do those same interventions with 200 students, but some of those 200 students aren't already having absenteeism problem, you're not going to get the same percentage change, right? Because you're targeting sometimes the wrong students with the wrong intervention. So really pulling that data in to refine who do I need to provide interventions to, and then having those constant conversations is a wonderful strategy. But yes, does anybody else have questions from Kath or for Kathy, or want to talk about anything that they are also doing that they're finding is moving the needle at your site? Okay, well, this is not the last conversation that we're going to have about absenteeism. So if we'll continue the conversation for sure. Are there people who would like to stay on for the Director Power Hour? And if so, then I just need somebody that would be willing to host it, which just means keep the room open for anybody that wants to stay. But if nobody's staying, then we'll just close it out.
JoDee, I can stay on
Yeah.
to host if anybody wants to stay on.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. My last slide that I'm going to put up is the contact information for all of us and our survey. Now, I know we ask you to do this survey over and over and over again, but this survey really is what drives us in deciding what content would be the most useful for you, what your needs are in the field, and what the how we can make an impact together. So take a moment to do the survey. I don't know if it's being put in the chat, but if it's not, QR codes up here, it will be, oh, it just popped up in the chat. So you don't have to do it immediately, but I really would like for you to do it by the end of the day if you can. So the UCF team is going to log off, and Kathy, when you, I'm sorry, Christina, is it Christina? Christina is staying on to host?
Yes, ma'am, I can stay on.
Okay, so we will log out now, and you can stay on to host, and you can close the meeting whenever you're done. So let me stop the recording because